Hello and welcome to Sophie & Co. I'm Sophie Shevardnadze. As the annual St. Petersburg International Economic Forum gets underway in Russia, it seems sanctions and political tensions aren't affecting the world of business. Well, can economic cooperation help mend relations between countries? We ask one of the world's leading businessmen, the head of the aluminium giant Rusal, Oleg Deripaska, is my guest today.
As Western politicians attempt to put Russia into isolation, the world's economic elite are not as eager to cut ties with Moscow, heading to the annual International Economic Forum in St. Petersburg, along with the new players from the East. How is political tension affecting business? Is anybody willing to mix politics and money? And how is Russia holding up in the face of sanctions?
Oleg Deripaska, head of Rusal, the aluminium giant, thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you.
So tell me something, how has doing business changed ever since the sanctions were imposed? Do you think the political tensions have translated into tensions between business partners? Because I'm thinking, businessmen they always go around stumbling blocks and find loopholes and ways to do whatever they want to do.
Not easy this time.
Really?
Yes.
So you really feel the tension with your business partners in the West?
No, it's not a tension. They just need to evaluate the risk, and risk of punishment quite high. And we've seen many cases like BNP Bank case when they lost, almost $8 billion, just being part of transaction which maybe they were not even aware, in Africa. Same in Russia. It's quite severe damage.
Obviously, with the sanctions ever since they were imposed by Europe and the US, the access to international capital market has been impeded. How much has business shrunk with the West and with Europe in particular?
Commercial transaction, more or less okay. We have pressure on trade finance, project finance, because capital market, direct investment, everything been reduced dramatically.
I remember you had a very special relationship with the United States. You had, once your visa canceled, then you could go back again. And maybe 1 or 2 years ago, you said that the United States was like the ideal place for making business, and you were very attracted and interested in it. In today's political reality, with today's situation, would you still have, if you had a choice, could you still do it?
Of course.
Yeah? No restrictions there?
No restriction, but it would be, it would be a lot of problem just because we have Russian origin as a companies.
What are your Western partners telling you? How has the closure of Russian market affected?
Not much. They all try to understand, for how long, how severe would be next move, and you must understand, not many people knew about Ukraine. What Ukraine was, 5, 6, 7 years ago. It's post-Soviet republic, struggled to get, economy balance. Now it's become a political issue. Security in Europe, general relation with the United States, and all other aspect of. Say international community commitment, to put more pressure on Russia. And in my view, it's two sides. How to say? Both sides, should evaluate, how much at stake and what would be way out. And maybe in our case, it's not just two sides. We need to take also Ukraine. As a part of solution. They're not in normal economic cycle, more than a year and a half. Their GDP drop, 1/3, and there is not many prospect. You can get some money, some credit, but you still need to repay it. And we have a big business in Ukraine, and we know that Ukrainian economy is so tied to Russia, or let's say Eurasian, group of countries, Russia, Kazakhstan, gas supply from Central Asia. They need our market. They need to have our supply, and they need to have access, to our debt market as well.
It's funny you bring up Ukraine in that context, because I just came back from America and I spoke to a lot of people, businessmen, leading political consultants, and they're saying the smart money right now should and is going to Ukraine. What do you make of that? Would you personally see your prospects in Ukraine right now?
No, it's impossible. At this moment, it's impossible. Just political, how to say, support for IMF or some other, countries, business like direct, German or EU support, or maybe some, small support directly from United States. No, I can't see. War must be stopped. It's not just a tragedy; it's just waste of time. And Ukraine must present, and all interested parties should support the plan. And we at this moment have a three-party, Russia and Europe plus Ukraine, and we've seen that United States made, they made tremendous efforts, to be part of this, sort of negotiations, post-Minsk discussion. But unclear, who would do what at this moment.
What I'm asking is that maybe it's too naive to imagine that economic ties could help mend relations between Russia and Ukraine, or Russia and its Western partners.
It only helps, but not easy. We have a politician in Ukraine, whose future unclear. That's why they bet only on one side. And it takes some time when economy will really matter for them. They still struggle with the political part of the crisis. Maybe in a couple of years when they will have new government, because it's clear that this government will not survive, and it will create opportunity for economic discussion, but not at this moment, not for the next 12, 18 months.
But this whole sanction business, it has sort of instigated or maybe created long-term structural changes for Russia. For instance, agreeing on oil and gas pipelines with China. Do you think that maybe this political and economic difficulties is sort of a blessing in disguise in some sort in the long run?
China will sooner or later be more patient about environment, but it takes some time. This moment, they're telling us the story that only in 2030 they will start thinking how to reduce emission of green gases, and that's why, yes, they would like to have clean, energy access, to our gas for Beijing and main provinces, but it's not something which would make huge difference either for Russia or for them.
Tell me something. Your company, Rusal, was actually one of the first to start making business with China.
First, yeah.
How different is it to make business with Chinese? I'm talking about in terms of business culture differences. How different is it to deal with them and their companies as opposed to Western guys?
Westerns, they're more open. Chinese, it's economy which, same as Russian economy, struggles through transition. They started with Deng Xiaoping 15 years earlier than we are. And there is still a lot of, dark, shadowed, parts of economy. And you just need to know better your partner, understand them, make sure that their long-term interests align with your interest, and work, through the, day-to-day, practice, good relations out, and then you can do whatever you want. Rusal, first, went to China in mid-90s, before even Rusal was created, when we have separate, companies, before merger, and only, let's say, 15 years later, we'll be able to raise, $2 billion in Hong Kong. But Rusal been a well-known company, at that moment.
Another one of your companies, Ian Plus Group, is actually eyeing $1 billion worth of Chinese investment. Does it still not mean that Russian business is making a pivot to Asia?
What $1 billion means for Mother Russia? Nothing. And it's long term, and we We bet on very specific items. We bet on clean energy and access to the hydro capacity which China needs to manage their peak capacity, which provides them tremendous saving. They understood this, and that's why they develop relation with us. And again, it took 7-8 years just to get to the point when both sides ready to discuss what's price, what condition, and what terms. And it's not easy. And to say that Russia will be back the same way as we're back from European markets, for debt funding, or same way as the U.S. investor been ready, to invest in Russian companies and equity. It's impossible. It will take another 20 years. That's why we need to go back to normal business. And as I said, it's a way, from a both side, and it should be negotiations. No one will come to each other and say, "Okay, we give up."
So you're very skeptical about Russia actually turning towards China in light of this sanctions thing going on.
I'm not skeptical, I'm practical. It will take 7 years just to do something.
So you don't think, for instance, bettered relations with China means development of Siberia, of the Far East? You don't feel like Chinese are interested in investing there?
In 15 years, yes, but what we're gonna do, this 15 years? What's our plan? At this moment, no one needs commodities. Commodities available from everywhere, from Australia, from Africa, from Indonesia. It's not an issue anymore. Things grows, stale, and it become not so rapid. We have access capacity all around the globe. That's why we shouldn't compete. We shouldn't compete and make every dollar possible. We need to think how to make a second step. How to produce value-added product, and it's a longer way. It's not even 7 years. It's maybe 7 years just to build infrastructure, just to build airports. Chinese partner must come and see where they're going to invest. Produce enough infrastructure, that we can provide them space where they could be plant, joint venture. And it's a long process.
We're going to take a short break right now. When we come back, we'll continue talking to Oleg Deripaska, head of Rusal, aluminum giant, and we'll ask him if the fears of Chinese dominance are groundless. Stay with us.
Since the liberation from Serbia in 1999, the people of Kosovo were very optimistic.
Imigrimi ilegal ka fillu nga muji nëntor I vitit 2014, atëherë kur edhe Serbia hapi kufit.
Për shkak të varfërisë detyrohen njerëz me dalë, së dihet që me vend tonë s'ka kërkona më as puna që tash varfëria I bën këto do të detyrohu me lëshu, do të thonë vendin tanë Kosovën edhe me dalë me gjetë një punë dika.
Çfarë po bën në Gjermani tash?
Gjermani po me diku.
Çfarë po flet në Gjermani tash?
Po pritëm me mujt me punu diçka, me vonë në shtëpi teme diçka me vonë.
Please leave the area immediately. Do not call 911. Fire in your area is imminent.
There's no denying our life has changed.
And when ecosystems change, we have to change with it. And we may be forced to make these changes rather rapidly.
And our relations with nature are changing too. But we are told that it only seems so.
Here, climate does fluctuate. It goes from hot to cold. We have ice ages. But do you believe carbon pollution?
Who pays for hiding the truth from us?
These industries have a lot of power. The Koch brothers, for example, gave millions and millions of dollars to the Republican efforts to win control of the House of Representatives. And then they made newly elected Republicans sign a pledge that they would not do anything to fight climate change because it didn't exist.
Dramas that can't be ignored. Stories others refuse to notice. Faces changing the world right now. A full picture of today's news. Live, on demand, from around the globe. Rockley.tv.
And we're back with Oleg Deripaska, head of Rusal, the aluminum giant. Oleg, do you feel like now that Russia has voluntarily or involuntarily turned to China, this is something that has happened because of sanctions, or it would have happened anyways because it's China and it's a natural course of things?
It should happen anyway, and we shouldn't provide Siberian opportunity just for China. It's Korea, and Russia definitely should be part of North Korea, South Korea talk and bring peace to this peninsula. It's Japan, it's China, and the whole Eastern Asian economy, which we can provide a lot of opportunity.
So you don't feel like Europe is actually risking to lose Russian market to China?
Not chance. Even geographically, we have our eastern deposit and eastern business, and we have western well-developed deposit with all infrastructure, pipelines, ports, all facilities, all logistic solution for the Chinese. That's why even Turkey, for our gas, it's not alternative to Europe. It's additive, towards towards an existing market.
So I just want to hear one more time from you, because in light of recent events, there's excessive talk about ending Europe's dependency on Russian oil and gas, and vice versa. I mean, can that really happen? Can any of the sides afford that, really?
It's not our business. Market will definitely be more competitive, but Europe will always depend upon Russian oil and gas. And it would be very price sensitive towards LNG opportunity or some other shale opportunity which may be developed in some countries. But still, Russia and Europe so forged that I couldn't see that they could be separated. It could be in a bitter sort of discussion, in a more tougher environment, maybe more sanction, but sooner or later everything would be settled. But we need to make a step forward as well.
I don't know if you know Jim Rogers. This is an expert on investment. I was talking to him the other day, and he actually says that this economic downturn in Russia is a good thing for investors. Do you agree?
No.
At all?
At all. No, Russia we're just wasting time. And, this collapse of our currency last December and, tougher monetary policy, of course, slows the growth and reduce speed of development. And Russia needs to do a lot on infrastructure. Russia needs to do, much more thing to develop, agriculture and manufacturing activity. And it's not so easy.
But don't you think that maybe being pushed into sanctions actually pushes Russia away from being so heavily dependent or relying almost exclusively on resource-based economy?
You need capital, you need technology and partners to develop manufacturing and value-added product.
Can't we do it on our own? You just said Russia is so rich. What's $1 billion?
I agree, but Russia rich. Russia super rich. But the issue, you need to have a proper debt market, which we were not able to develop for different reasons. First, we believe it's cheaper, to borrow outside than develop local markets. Second, capital market, which based on trust, and we need to reform our legal system, improve our courts. and make sure that title and private property defended in the same way as the state property. And of course, we're not yet in a market-based economy. Our state, more than 70% and in our economic portfolio, and it should be massive privatization. State companies should sell a lot of product and make sure that private and foreign business has equal access to that, and economy must be much more competitive.
So you're saying we need competitive economy, we need partners, we need people who would actually invest in Russia, and we're in a great difficulty right now. So what would you tell your Western partners? Why should they invest in Russia now?
They should invest if they feel that they have a product or they believe that they could find a company or business which produce them enough profit, taking in account the risk which they could face. Only with that.
Good argument, I guess.
It's the only way, and it doesn't matter is it Russia, India, China, or Germany. It would be same solutions, and people will evaluate the risk, and of course for them, it's a great, incentive to wait. And unfortunately for us, it would be, just waste of time at this moment.
Russia has joined the Chinese Asia Infrastructure and Investment Bank as one of the founding members, actually. What do you make of that whole venture? Can it actually replace something like IMF and the World Bank?
They have different scope. This bank, would support Chinese development of new Silk Road and infrastructure around that trade. They said one belt, something like this, one group of nations, and one road, one belt, one economic belt. They have their own program and they're developing it. It's important that Russia part of this funding, members, but still, and we can't compare with IMF. First of all, IMF is not, Russia is not a client for IMF. We're not in such a problem.
That's a good thing, I would assume, that we're not their client.
No, just an institution which deal with economies which facing different type of problem, like Ukraine, like Greece, and which almost in default. Russia definitely not in default. We're talking about growth. We can either stay and suffer stagnation, not very high, but still it would be waste of time to be in this position, or we can settle. Try to find solution, and don't forget, Ukrainians, they're our brothers. They're literally our brothers. 70% of Ukrainian has relatives in Russia, 40% Russian has relatives in Ukrainians. There is no other nations which would be so tight. Even Canadian Americans, they're not so tight like us.
But still, I want to talk a little bit more about this new bank, Asia Infrastructure Bank. What other benefits do you see that bank giving? Do you think Russian businessmen would participate as investors, or do you think they will be just seeking funding for infrastructure?
Difficult to say. I never saw memorandum. Every institution should have an investment memorandum. We've never seen, because my assumption is that when founding partner will meet, finally, they never met. They will see the memorandum which management will present, and then this memorandum will see, what condition for the project, they assume which would be funded, and at what terms, and what scale, and how it should be structured. At this moment, it's just idea. Don't forget, Chinese, we have a nice PR campaign all around, the globe. Chinese have even better PR campaigns. They managed to sell country which has literally, worst condition to live. And all people, bringing money there.
But, whatever living conditions there are inside China, China's financial and economic might is still pretty impressive. So whichever country partners up with China, it cannot possibly be on the same footing with China. This whole Russia-China partnership, are you a little worried about Chinese dominance here?
Look at Chinese compass. Our compass force, narrow, always seek north. Chinese compass, narrow, always seek south. They always try to build wall from the north, not from the south. They have a different movement. No one wants to spend much time in Siberia. Believe me, it's a tough place to live. But as I said, we are European. There is a great desire to develop Eurasia, and we must support. It's few centuries since Russians tried to develop Siberia, Far East, but still, it's a challenging. We need to use every opportunity. China is not the only partner. Korea, Japan, South Asia, Southeast Asia. We all should we should use all opportunity to supply and provide resources for, and more important, value-added product for these countries. But as I said, I can't see miracle would happen overnight. 7 years minimum to develop infrastructure, and we need a lot of capital, a lot of debt, to do it. And unfortunately, Russia now suffer great squeeze. You saw what budget, and fight, over how to cut expense and market collapse, and that's why, we should assume if sanction will not be stopped, it would be longer, and every year should add maybe a couple of years, since it would be postponed. That's why we need to deal with the issues one by one. First, we need to resolve Ukraine, and we must do it. We must stop this war.
What, America is doing its own pivot to Asia, only bypassing China. They're actually creating the Trans-Pacific Partnership to counter China. Do you think it's a wise thing? Is it a good thing? For them, obviously.
TPP? I don't know. Everyone, it's always commercial agreement. It's even WTO. It's not a nice sort of flourish negotiations. It's very commercial, and Russia suffer a lot, when we give up a few sectors, when we provide an opportunity for our competitors, on Russian market. Same, U.S. has a huge power, huge economic power. They try to use this power to deal with other countries on their terms. That's why they provide this TPP agreement, Trans-Pacific Partnership. China, I don't know, they need to either to find a solution and provide better terms for that countries in which part of it, like Peru, like Japan, or they need to face, some challenging time.
All right, Alek Deripaska, thank you very much for this interview.
Thank you.